That's where my trust issues and cynicism came from.
Oh. You good, Deana?
Yep. I was playing around with the setting.
Okay.
We're good.
Deana was home and then back at the arena again.
Hello, and welcome to episode 22 of Calder's Calling, the Calder Times flagship podcast and your premier podcast destination for everything surrounding the American Hockey League. I'm Jay Foster, and I am joined today by Deana Weinheimer and Corey Swart. We've got the whole crew here again, and we'll try to be a little bit less chaotic than last week, but we make no promises. Before we kick things off, if you aren't already subscribed to us on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube, go ahead and do that now. If you're currently watching on YouTube, please feel free to like, share, leave a comment. If you hit the little bell button below this video, you will just get alerted every single time we post a new episode. So you should definitely do that. I'd also like to thank our show sponsor, Document Doctors. While not on the ice, they can help you and your business optimize and increase your revenue and profits to a bigger slice. Check out documentdoctorsllc.com. Don't forget to mention that the Calder Times sent you to them. Let's get started with some of our quick hits, and we'll try to make them quick this week because we have a ton of them. So, Deana, why don't you get things started off with the bummer of the segment?
Yeah, so this past Friday, the Rochester Americans, who have just been on an absolute tear through the North Division, they announced that defenseman Riley Stillman had undergone successful, that's the good word here, successful season-ending surgery to repair a lower body injury that was sustained in the team's 5-3 win over the Toronto Marlies back on March 15th. Now, the team did say that Riley is expected to make a full recovery. In terms of what kind of impact this is going to be on Rochester, he's not a huge offensive presence, but he really excels in a shutdown role, has some snarl, not afraid to set the physical pace. But for a team that really prides themselves on their defense, it's definitely going to be a loss. But hopefully healing goes well and we'll see him again next season.
Well, yeah, we're certainly wishing him a speedy recovery here, but turning to some more happy news, a milestone alert for Jamison Rees, who skated in his 200th AHL game this past Saturday in a 5-2 win for the Belleville Senators over the Syracuse Crunch. And I believe we have a little bit of wholesome content to share along with that. That's my favorite player moment.
Yeah, so this tweet was making the rounds this weekend from Erica LeBaire at Erica LeBaire3 on X. And her 7-year-old, at one point he just said, "That's my favorite player." And now he and Jamison Rees have become good friends. Just a really wholesome moment. And this is truly what the sport, what professional sports is all about. Letting, these younger players seeing their idols, getting to meet them, and look at that, got an autographed jersey out of the deal too. So thanks, Erica, for sharing that, and congratulations to Jamison.
I love when who among us hasn't done this, right? Where you just look at a player and you're like, oh, that's mine now. That's my favorite guy now. So deeply relatable to this 7-year-old who just decided that Jamison Rees was his favorite player, because I have also been there. And speaking of milestones, we've got a bunch of first AHL goals, which is always exciting. Let's start off with a very exciting one. Jonathan Lekarimäki came over from Sweden. They basically decided that they wanted him in the AHL instead of not doing anything. Scores his first AHL goal for the Abbotsford Canucks, and it's a pretty darn good one, if you ask me. Next up, it's a very Pacific heavy, this one at the minute. Sam Colangelo from the San Diego Gulls. There was actually 2 first AHL goals in this game. We'll get to the second one in just a second, but he scores his first pro goal in his first pro game for the San Diego Gulls. Moving on over to Anton Warburg from the Amerks, he scored his first goal as well, and we'll just pull that goal up for you against Providence as well, which is that's a tough opponent to score your first AHL goal on. Moving back over to San Diego, we've got Connor Smith, also of the Gulls. It's been a good week for the Gulls. They won a game, and they have had a couple of debuts here. So another AHL debut, another first career AHL goal, and the one that I am the most excited about, because as we all know, I am a massive homer, and Philip Biestet, who made his AHL debut for the San Jose Barracuda, also scored his first AHL goal in his debut, and not content with that, he added a second one against the Gulls. I believe he ended up with a 3-point night in his AHL debut, and has been stapled to that 1C spot in San Jose basically ever since then. So you love to see it. We love to see firsts on this show. I enjoy that tweet just below the AHL one that just says silencing the haters. Like, same.
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool to go through and watch these goals, because a lot of them, sometimes you see some of these goals that are just like, that's a fluke, it's happened, but some of these are just the player just picking the right spot, unloading on the goaltender. Congratulations to
I mean, that's a
all
heck of
those
a
guys.
pass from 79 there in San Jose, but still credit to Biestet for being in the right place at the right time.
That draw pass too, though. All right. Well, we're going to talk. We're going to go out of the.
We're leaving the Pacific Division now.
Yeah, the
Forever.
Pacific Division.
That was it. We're done now.
And we're going to go to the Central. I had to get my bearings as to where we are. I blame the eclipse today. It was totality here in Columbus. It's making my brain a little crazy. But in a move that might actually, keyword being might, help the Grand Rapids Griffins as they are jockeying for playoff position. It has been announced that Ville Husso has been loaned to Grand Rapids for conditioning. Now, he has been out since February 13th with a lower body injury. Now, on the loan, he can spend up to 14 days on the AHL roster, which would bring him right about to the end of the regular season.
I forgot that he was in the Red Wings organization, I'm not going to lie. And it's always tough to know which way a conditioning assignment is going to go for a goalie. I feel like it's either going to go really well for Grand Rapids, or it's going to go really poorly for them. And I'm not going to say which way I hope that it goes, but definitely one of them. Speaking of goaltending, we're gonna jump up to the NHL just for a second. It's relevant, I promise. Two AHL graduates who made their NHL debuts earlier this season in Devin Cooley and Jesper Wallstedt both grabbed their first NHL wins this week. Devin Cooley playing as well, technically he's not a San Jose native. He's from Los Gatos, which is about 20 minutes outside of San Jose. Grew up there, former junior Shark, got his first NHL win at the Shark Tank in San Jose, becomes the first Californian-born goaltender to win an NHL game playing for a California team, which is really cool. And then Jesper Wallstedt, who I feel like we know how much I love Wallstedt on this show, because I talk about him literally
Just
all the time. Made his NHL debut earlier this season. It didn't go great for him, I think mostly because the team in front of him decided not to show up, but got his first win, and it was a shutout. So shout out to Cooley and Wallstedt, both AHL graduates, making their mark on the NHL this season.
Wallstedt was playing against the Bears earlier this weekend, so that's about the same as playing against an NHL team at this point. I know.
So that's how you really feel, Corey. And I mean, in fairness, not to get derailed here, but his shutout was against the Blackhawks. I don't know if you put the Hershey Bears versus the Chicago Blackhawks, I can't with confidence say that the NHL team would win there. So,
oh no, not at all.
Like,
I would put my money on the Bears. Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, I know Jay said we weren't going back to the Pacific Division, but psych, we're going back there anyways. I have a Player of the Week announcement that just came through here. Bakersfield Condors forward Seth Griffith was named the Howie's Hockey Tape AHL Player of the Week for the period ending April 7th, 2024. He tallied 2 goals and 5 assists for 7 points in 3 games last week, helping the Bakersfield Condors secure a playoff spot in the Pacific Division, which, if memory serves for me, guys, is completely set now in the Pacific Division. You go from one division like the North, where there is a whole one team that has secured a spot, to the Pacific Division, which has all spots secured. So we're going to be going a little bit in more on depth on that one, but just the fun of the AHL's playoff race at this point. But
fun. Let's use that word.
For some teams like the Condors, they kind of needed some of these big performances here. It's obviously a bit of a racetrack here in a sense. There's some teams that were kind of clinging to life there. And, credit to the Condors. They really made a push, and Seth Griffith, a huge part of helping them secure a playoff spot.
And I have one piece of news that's going to wrap up the quick hits segment. But the American Hockey League has announced that several of their female officials are going to be going to the 2024 Women's World Championship, IIHF, up in Utica, New York. So congratulations to Alexandra Clark, Sienna Leifers, Samantha Hiller, Amanda Tassoni, and Kirsten Welsh, who are all joining that officiating crew. Now, with Kirsten Welsh and Samantha Hiller, I believe they were part of the first group of female officials to actually join in the American Hockey League. So it's nice to see how that group has grown and that they are getting some now international playing experience, or officiating experience, I guess.
Yeah, I think it rules. I think it rules that the AHL has female officials and lines people. It's always fun to see, and this is not I hope it's not an overgeneralization, but the female officials are usually smaller than the hockey players. It's very funny to watch them just bullying the guys to the penalty box when they don't want to go. So I always enjoy watching a 5'6" lines person just bullying some hockey player to the penalty box. Sparks joy.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is I'm going down on the post on, what am I on? Facebook. I'm never on Facebook, but that's where I found the post. Some people are talking about this would be my daughter's future dream, just congratulating them, how cool it is. And then there's some people that are like, I know the last one on the right, she's the toughest official. She just gets in there and breaks up fights. She isn't afraid. It's just I love this.
Yeah, it's very cool. I enjoy it. Very cool to see them doing the women's IHF as well. Let's do our stars of the week, and I feel like instead of "Oops All Ethans," which we were joking about in our group chat before recording, we appear to have instead gone for some non-traditional stars of the week. In that, I don't think any of us have picked a player. So, Corey, I'm just gonna let you do your victory lap here for your star.
Yeah. So the Bears fans who listen out there and my haters, I will just lump them all as my haters.
To the haters
out there who say that I talk about the Hershey Bears too much. My haters will know that I didn't talk about the Bears at all during our quick hits, and that's because I decided to throw them all together into my 3 stars of the week as just my stars, because they're my guys. So the Bears were in action for a pair of games against the Iowa Wild this weekend, won both games, and hit a milestone today, guys, with their last win in a shootout. Matt Strome scored bottom of the 7th round in a shootout with a brilliant move to lift the Bears to their 50th win of the regular season on Saturday. So that statistic is relevant because the Bears have been so good this season, but they've only hit 50 wins 3 other times in their 86-year history. So this is now their 4th time hitting 50 wins in their in this season. So, and the crazy part to me, guys, is that all the times that the Bears have hit 50 wins in their history have been recent times. In fact, 3 of them now have all taken place during Hershey's current affiliation with the Washington Capitals. 2006-07 season, the 2009-10 season, and now this season. The only other time it happened was in the 1987-88 season, where they were barely able to get 50 wins, ended up going on a 12-0 unbeaten run to get to the Calder Cup. And that's the other great stat about this whole thing. In case you needed any other Bears stats to give you confidence that this team has a run in them, all 3 of those other times that the Bears hit 50 wins, they have at least gone to the Calder Cup finals. They've won the Calder Cup twice in those 2 times. The only time they lost was in 2007, where they essentially got carry-priced by the Hamilton Bulldogs in a very memorable goaltending performance. Very easy Calder Cup MVP, in my opinion, for that season. But also want to lop in a couple of other stars or statistics that would normally go in the quick hits here. Mike Vecchione hit his 400th AHL game on Saturday. We just celebrated that milestone earlier for pro games. He had a couple of games with the Philadelphia Flyers early on in his career. And Todd Nelson hit 700 AHL games behind the bench. As we know, he's pushing records to be in the upper echelon of coaches amongst wins here previously as well. So the accolades just kind of keep rolling in here. The Bears have done all of this. Their best performance ever in a season was winning 60 games during the 09-10 season. They had 80 games to hit that mark. I think it makes it much more crazy that they hit 50 wins this season with only 72 games of running room to run at that type of mark here. So incredibly impressive stuff. Very impressive to watch. And I only realize it's a coincidence that I am wearing some Calder Cup related attire to be on this podcast with. So to my haters, that's my Bears segment for right now. So
is it a coincidence or is it just that you don't own any other clothes?
When you ask, it's that I don't own any other clothes. So it's because I don't want to wear anything for my other team in the NHL at this point. So I'm just kind of settling into what I know and love here. So I do have other clothes. Some people, you know. I have been told by people that it's weird if I'm not wearing a Bears t-shirt. So, you know, just run with that. I'm just at the Bears. I mean, you know, if you need a fashion model or something for your up and coming merchandise, I'm available.
A man's got to have a brand, Corey. I respect it. I'm also going non-traditional with my star of the week in that I had a quick look and no one was really jumping out that I hadn't already used or someone else had used recently. So my star of the week is actually the AHL.com's playoff primer, which is just a fantastic resource that I check every single day. It gives you potential clinching scenarios, elimination scenarios, gives you the rundown of who's playing that night, what each team has to do to make the playoffs. It gives them all, like, it's got their remaining strength of schedule scores on there. It's got how many points they need to clinch a playoff spot. Like, it's got everything. I've been checking it basically every day. The Barracuda are well out of it because the Pacific Division is stupid. But I have been checking it basically every single day, looking to see whether the Cleveland Monsters will finally put me out of my misery and hurry up and clinch the playoffs already. So that's my number one star. Is not a player. It is, in fact, a PDF on a website.
Well, a worthy call.
I mean, yeah, it's totally worthy because maybe we can just say maybe the people that put the work into the PDF becoming a real thing. Yeah, I rely on that because every once in a while I get confused on the bottom part, like how teams can gain points from the highest number possible points that's out of the playoff picture. That kind of throws me off sometimes. So I rely on that. So thank you so much, AHL team. So I kind of have like 2 half stars to make 1 half star or make 1 full star. And it's 2 things that made me laugh, both on the night of April 6th. And I had to tweet about it. So I'm going to share both of these clips here. So first of all, we're going to do the Cleveland versus Lehigh Valley game. This game was complete chaos from start to finish. We almost had a goalie goal, which is awesome in and of itself. But check out this play from veteran forward Stefan Matteau, who sends 6'3" Lehigh Valley Phantom Ethan Sampson head over heels directly into the Cleveland Monsters bench. I tweeted this on X, Twitter. I die on this hill. But just watch the perfect form from Sampson when he goes over. It's perfect. Perfect cartwheel. And then just wait for the nice little scruff here, but just wait for the close-up.
After Matteau eat the Phantom's player onto the boards, over the boards, and into the Monsters' bench.
Perfect cartwheel.
It does stress me out when players go like head over heels because those skates are really sharp.
They are.
It does stress me out when they're like waving them around at head height, but
yeah,
the Russian judge gives it a 10. So
yes, I was going to give it like a 9.5 because it can get better.
I just want a woman to fall head over heels for me the way that he fell head over heels for the boards.
Oh, that just turned. Oh, I don't know where to.
It's goals.
I don't know how to how do I transition out of that other than okay, so just a few hours later that night we had something else in the Rockford versus Grand Rapids game that I literally had to tweet my husband and a friend of his that still works at Delta Airlines to see if maybe the FAA might have gotten a clearance for this because this stick height is unbelievable. Okay. Keep an eye right here. Did you see the height on that?
That got some height on it.
That got some massive height on it. But yeah, I'll do it one more time. It's going to be this guy back here. And it just snaps in half. Yeah. Just both of them made me laugh. They were two, I think, highlight reel that were not highlight things. But yeah. So those two got my stars.
If you're going to break a stick, that's the way I wanted to break a stick. Is that you want it to be on a big slap shot while you're looking cool. You know, none of this stuff where it just kind of the blade kind of, fractured at one spot or, something like I want it to be in a whole slap shot. Those are the only times, it stinks in the moment, but you're like, I would rather it be that than anything else.
Or you get the whole crowd to go, whoa, or ooh, you get a reaction from the crowd.
I like it when the stick breaks and the blade ends up in the net and everyone loses their mind because they think it's the puck. It's not quite as good as, I believe it was Georgi Romanov in Rockford and his stick ending up stuck in the netting somehow. That's my favorite hockey stick related AHL disaster this season. But honestly, sometimes the stars of the week don't have to be people. Sometimes they can just be things that make us happy. And I think that's what we did this week. Before we move on to our next segment, where I believe we're going to be talking about some playoff pushes, some playoff races, some playoff previews, maybe. I have to share a little bit more about one of our sponsors today, and that is Document Doctors. Is your business growing beyond the four walls of your office? As businesses grow, so do the challenges of keeping people trained, safe, and supportive. Document Doctors, a proud sponsor of the Calder's Calling podcast and the Calder Times, offers affordable solutions to help optimize your business and keep the good times rolling. They offer content-focused solutions such as training document creation, back-office process optimization, policy and procedure development, and much, much more. Support the podcast and the Calder Times by visiting them at documentdoctorsllc.com. And don't forget to mention us when talking to their team of contentologists. Once again, that is documentdoctorsllc.com. Shop and support small businesses today. Now, I decided to help out in the script here with a joint segment that Corey and Deana are going to handle together. And I did just write playoffs in all capitals with 6 S's. And I feel like that sums up what we're about to talk about. So, Deana, why don't you take it away?
First of all, my Grammarly hates it. My Grammarly has a
My
big
goal
red
in life is to
line.
upset Grammarly at any given moment. So I feel okay about that.
Yeah, it's kind of bugging out over that. But yeah, it's no surprise that we are talking about playoffs. Once again, it is the talk of the AHL as we're getting more and more into things being solidified. And yes, a North Division team has clinched. I thought it was never going to happen, but it did. So yay, the North Division. But we're just going to kind of run down each division. So Corey and I are teaming up on this one. He's going to take the Atlantic. We're just going to kind of talk about which teams have clinched, what's kind of coming up. Are there any like big clinching scenarios this week? What are the teams to look for? And kind of who's maybe throwing a wrench into the whole thing. So I'll let Corey run through the Atlantic division real quick, and then I'll be back to talk more about that pesky North Division.
Pesky North Division is right. They should just put pesky in front of it just for the rest of time, just because it fits it so well. But for the Atlantic Division, the spots are rapidly filling. The dance card is almost completely set. You have 4 teams that have clinched a spot in the playoffs. The top 2 spots have already kind of been locked in, I believe, with the exception of maybe the second place. Wilkes-Barre is really pushing there. So you have the Hershey Bears at the top with 105 points. They're not going to be caught anytime soon in this season. Obviously, talked about them hitting 50 wins, all that sort of stuff. They're not going to be caught. There's not enough space for it. Providence, however, is in jeopardy of losing the first-round buys. In the Atlantic Division, there are 2 first-round buys. The Bears have 1. The Bruins are kind of clinging onto 1 here a little bit. There are 6 games for them, 5 games for Wilkes-Barre. Wilkes-Barre is only 4 points away from potentially upending Providence and taking that home ice advantage, or I should say bye in the first round from the play-in series. Spots 3 and 4 get home ice over spots 5 and 6 in the play-in round of the Calder Cup playoffs. So right now, Wilkes-Barre looks to be settling for third. They are in a tie with the Charlotte Checkers at 81 points. So I should really say it's either Wilkes-Barre or Charlotte can potentially try to steal up into one of those spots to potentially improve their positioning here. I don't believe any of these teams have head-to-heads coming up with each other, at least. So it's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching for both of those teams. But outside of the bubble here, you have the 5th place Hartford Wolfpack, who may never win another hockey game again. It's hard to say at this point. They have struggled mightily, to put it politely, as nicely as I can. It's let me pull up an actual standings card so I can kind of give you guys a good sense for that. The Wolfpack have the worst past 10 record in the Atlantic Division at 1-8-0-1. That is correct. 1 win, 8 losses, and a shootout loss in their last 10 games. You talk about a team that's been kind of declawed. They maybe lost some of their pack along the way. It's, draw whatever comparison you will there. It's been a rough outing for them here recently. So they are sitting in 5th place. They have this big cushion that's slowly kind of evaporating over the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, who are in 6th place. At one point, the Phantoms just looked like they might not make the playoffs. They just might not have enough running room there. But giving the Wolfpack run for their money are the 7th place Springfield Thunderbirds, who may also never win another game again. Hartford and Springfield are kind of contending for the biggest losing streaks here. Hartford has lost 6 straight. Springfield has lost 4 straight. Springfield is now 4 points out of the 6th and final spot in the Atlantic Division, with just 5 games left on their regular season schedule. It's just been tough sledding for a couple of these teams. Lehigh Valley's just kind of been the least worst team here, in my opinion. They've not, just like their NHL team, they're not doing anything special, but other teams are helping them out so much they might just be playing hockey beyond 72 games. There's possibilities here. They've also lost 2 games in a row and are 4-5, 1-0. It's a race that truly reminds you of the NHL's Metro Division race. and some of the wild card races. I'm sure you guys kind of have seen the memes on that one where it's like, come on, somebody just take this spot here, please. It hasn't happened so far. So, it's going to kind of be a battle of maybe just who wants it just enough to get in here, basically. So, one of the interesting tidbits that I did want to kind of bring up here is that, teams like Springfield, they're playing in Hartford on Friday. So some teams got to win here. One of these teams is going to break their losing streak here, or we could just settle for like a shootout game, and nobody ends up feeling good about themselves potentially. Who knows? Can't rule that possibility out here. Teams like Lehigh Valley, they have a little bit of a tough schedule. They're playing in Hershey on Friday, followed by a game against the already only eliminated playoff team in the Atlantic, the Bridgeport Islanders, who have kind of been a thorn in everybody's side that's played them here recently. Like, it's almost like their elimination has kind of been vindicating in a sense. They've knocked off some strong opponents. They're still kind of just average, but, also above average for what's been their season. So, going to be an interesting race. No one's foot is particularly hard on the gas pedal in that race right now, but it's one of those ones where it's going to be an interesting one to lock up and, potentially draw some first-round comparisons here pretty soon.
All right, and moving into the North Division. So as I referenced earlier, the Syracuse Crunch finally clinching. We have our first team out. Or I guess all teams are still in the race, but yeah, our first team locked in would be the proper word to say it. So that actually came not because they won a game, but because Utica lost 5-1 against Toronto this past Saturday. So the Syracuse Crunch clinched their spot before they even stepped 1 foot on the ice on Saturday. So that's kind of a nice way to just let you relax into your game a little bit. But coming up, we have 2 teams that definitely looked like they could clinch this week. First of all, are the Rochester Americans with 81 points, have a magic number of 1. And then the Cleveland Monsters with a magic number of 2. So there is a possibility, assuming, once again, I figured everything out correctly with the rule on the magic numbers, with the team with the highest possible total points outside of the playoff picture failing to earn standing points. If I understand that rule correctly, and I figured that out to be Belleville. So if Belleville loses when they visit Toronto on Wednesday, the day this podcast will come out, then by Thursday, Rochester and Cleveland could play or could be locked in to the playoffs. So fingers crossed for that. But looking further down the picture, we have the Toronto Marlies, just talked about them. They have a magic number of 7. The Laval Rocket is currently in 5th place. However, the Belleville Senators, the first team out, have a smaller magic number because the Belleville Senators also have 2 more games to play than the Laval Rocket for the remainder of the season. That's why I put that clarification in there about the magic number. It's the North, again, pesky. There's other words we can use for it, but pesky is the most family-friendly word I can think of. So and at this point, Utica still in the picture. They have 14 points right now. However, looking back at the streak right now, I mean, Utica could possibly go for it, but the problem is with this North Division is teams aren't necessarily losing right now. The only team that has been losing has been Cleveland, but they have gotten back to their winning ways after shutting out the Lehigh Valley Phantoms over the weekend. So honestly, other than Rochester and Cleveland and Toronto, when it comes to Laval, Belleville, and Utica, it is still anybody's spot to grab. So the North Division, once one team gets in Syracuse, we're going to start seeing them come fast and furious. So again, by the end of the week, expect Rochester, Cleveland to get in, and then we're going to see a massive battle coming up for that number 5 spot between Laval, Belleville, and Utica. So keep an eye on that North Division.
How many games do they have? The 72 game season?
Yes.
It's going to be a game 72, a playoff clinching spot in the in the North. I don't really need to add too much to this. I think you did a really good job. I do want to point out that the 7th place team in the North, the Utica Comets, would be 5th in the Atlantic Division, ahead of the Hartford Wolfpack with they have 71 points. Hartford only has 70. They would be 4th and clinched with a playoff spot in the Central Division. And they wouldn't make it in the Pacific, but again, we're going to cover the Pacific in a minute, and it's a very different kind of stupid to the North Division. But like, the North Division is a tough division.
It is.
Meanwhile, in the Central Division, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a minute, Manitoba exists.
Yep, but I wanted to bring up real quick about Utica though. This week they have two games out of division. They will be playing the Providence Bruins in Providence. The rest of the division going up against itself the remainder of the week. So that's huge for Utica while everyone else is beating up on each other. If they happen to give up a point or a couple points over the weekend, at least it's not to a direct competitor in the division. So Utica has the most to gain from this week.
Right, and absolutely. Well, in stark contrast to that, well, let's move on to the Central Division, which is a little bit familiar territory to me as an Atlantic Division person, just because the majority of spots for the playoffs have been locked up already. There's only one playoff spot left in contention. So let's just run down the standings here real quickly, and then we'll circle back to talk about this final battle here, so to speak. The Milwaukee Admirals, of course, lead the Central Division by 88 points to the nearest competitor, being the Grand Rapids Griffins at 80. So those are your top two teams. I believe only the top team in the Central gets a bye. You guys may have to double check my math on that one. Does it operate?
It's actually the same way as the North Division, where the top 3 teams get a buy-in, and then
so play-in. I guess it's more technically that the North and the Central have a play-in series, like in the NBA does, I believe.
Yeah, so with the North and the Central, 4 and 5 go up against each other. The winner of that plays number 1. So in the Central, that'd be Milwaukee, but 2 and 3 also face each other in the division semifinals. So that best of 3 first round, it's just 4 and 5.
Okay, ignore me on that one, but listen to me for the rest of this, because remembering the setups for the divisions and their playing rounds, like, I'm lucky that I know the Atlantic Division. The AHL put out a really great graphic, I believe, over the weekend that kind of explained, how each team finishes. If I remember correctly, that was really nice. I just couldn't recall the picture off the top of my head. But in third place, we have the Rockford Ice Hogs at 75 points. It's kind of a neat little storyline for like all 3 of the top teams here, because they're all teams that have kind of started off, maybe average to below average, and have really kind of gotten here from some really great second half surges. Obviously, we can't forget the Milwaukee Admirals and the Grand Rapids Griffins having such great winning or unbeaten streaks. But Rockford Ice Hogs, just looking at the thing, they have the best past 10 games of anybody in the Central Division at 8-2-0. Kind of an underrated team in my opinion. Followed by the 4th place Texas Stars, who, guys, like, they're kind of the opposite. Like, weren't they in like first place for like the longest time in the first half? And, kind of like the Hartford Wolfpack in the Atlantic Division, they're kind of, fading off, pretty hard in a sense, where it's just gone from riches to rags in a sense. But, say what you will about them, they've locked up a playoff spot. They are in at the 4th seed. And following that, we kind of have this interesting little battle here between the Manitoba Moose in the 5th and final spot, as well as the Chicago Wolves and the Iowa Wild. Now, the Manitoba Moose are incredibly close to locking up this final playoff spot here, and a magic number of just 4 points. But if you're a believer and you like to believe in chaos, as we so often like to on this show, the one thing that I kind of love about this ending matchup here is the Iowa Wild. Not only do they play, Iowa Wild basically have to win out, and everybody else has to, Manitoba controls their own destiny entirely. So if you're a Manitoba Moose fan out there, congrats. Your team controls your fate entirely. This should be a piece of cake as long as nothing crazy happens. But I would like to make a note of it that the Iowa Wild play Rockford this week on Tuesday. So, it'll be done by the time this show is out, I believe.
Yep.
But they also play the Manitoba Moose at a pair of games in Manitoba this coming weekend, Friday, Saturday, I believe. So if you're a believer in chaos, and you like to see upsets happen, that's where an upset starts. If the Iowa Wild could pull off 2 wins, it's not there. It's not quite done. It's not done, sealed deal yet, but that's some chaos. I would throw a wild card in the deck, but Iowa has struggled. Their magic number to clinch is 21 after all, and, requires a hefty amount of help from out of town, as well as, controlling what they can control at this point. 6 games left in the regular season. So again, you're probably looking at Manitoba clinching that spot, but if you like some chaos, there's some hockey for you this weekend to watch. And I'm sorry, correcting. I meant to say Saturday, Sunday are those 2 games. I misread the playoff primer at the end of it there. I saw what I wanted to see, if you will.
So we're going to go ahead and move on to the Pacific Division, and the chaos is pretty much done in the Pacific in terms of who's getting in. Now the question is who plays what, who ends up, second, third, fourth, whatever. But let's just do a quick rundown of the teams that will be represented in the Pacific Division playoffs towards the Calder Cup Playoffs. You think I would know that? Our outlet and our podcast both have Calder in the name. Wow. Okay, so in number 1, we have the Coachella Valley Firebirds with 95 points. They, with 21 points, they could end up grabbing that regular season title, but I think Hershey's magic number of 3 has something else to say about that. The Tucson Roadrunners at 83, right there with them with a game in hand. The Ontario Reign also with 83 points. Colorado Eagles in the 4th spot with 81. Abbotsford Canucks 79. Bakersfield Condors in 6 with 78. Calgary Wranglers also in 7 with 78, but Bakersfield has that in hand. So right now it's just, like I said, a lot of jockeying for position here. Some games coming up that I would keep an eye on. Tucson Roadrunners on Friday and Saturday are facing off against the Colorado Eagles. So they are Colorado only 2 points ahead with the game in hand. So that'll be a very interesting watch. And then Bakersfield Condors going up against San Diego Gulls on Wednesday, and then Coachella Valley on Friday. So kind of going from towards the bottom of the standings up to that number 1 spot. So that will be a really interesting benchmark for them. But yeah, Pacific Division all locked up. It's just a matter of time to see who finishes where there. And just because we talked about how the seeding works with play-in rounds, division semifinals, the Pacific Division runs almost the exact same way as the Atlantic Division, only there are 3 play-in games or 3 play-in brackets, 2-7, 3-6, and 4-5, and then the winners will move on. So very similar to the Atlantic, just with more teams.
I do feel like the Pacific Division's almost like its own playoff bracket in a sense, where it's kind of like you have, like, it's a much longer and tougher road in the sense that, like, you if you're not number 1, like, you have just quite a road to get even to, you almost feel like you should be able to hang famously in Hershey, they don't hang division banners, but like getting to that Pacific Division title is just such a challenge in and of itself. I mean, 3 of those spots are determined by the 3-game play-in round. You are not safe at number 2 in that division. And that fact just always amazes me about the Pacific. You could finish 2nd place and play 2 bad games and be out. It's insane to me.
It happened not last season, I believe, but the season before that, or possibly the season before that, Ontario finished 2nd in the division, like 2 points behind Calgary, who won it, and then met up with the Colorado Eagles, who have always had their number in the playoffs, and Colorado swept them, and Ontario's playoff run was over. So like the Pacific Division is the Thunderdome, and I feel like every single time I look at the playoff primer every single day, those matchups change every single day, because I don't remember if Deana mentioned this specifically, but between the 7th place team in the Pacific and the 2nd place team in the Pacific, not counting Coachella Valley, who've kind of run away with the division, there is a 5-point spread between 2nd place Tucson, who has 83, and 7th place Calgary, who has 78. So, like, Calgary could still finish 2nd in the division. Only just. They've only got 4 games left, but there's 8 points there. If Tucson loses out and Calgary wins out, they could flip-flop in this division. It's wild in the Pacific. It's a godless division.
Who are we if we're not looking at the playoff primer every single day for all of our doses of drama, as well as math? You know, you get a little of everything educational wise when you look at the AHL's playoff primer and invested in the Calder Cup playoffs and their seeding.
Some people go to TMZ and the drama subreddits, you know, for celebrities for their daily dose of tea. Me, I go to the AHL playoff primer. Every morning, it's my first read of the day.
You love to see it.
Oh, yeah.
We're going from serious, important, necessary playoff updates to what I'm going to go ahead and call the stupidest segment that we've done on this show. So in a minute, and I wouldn't tell Corey and Deana what my segment was. It is a surprise, but in honor of the eclipse today, I decided a moon-themed segment might be fun. So we're going to do that in just a second here. But first, I've got to tell you about one more of our sponsors, and that is BetStamp. Sports betting has rapidly risen in popularity, and having multiple sportsbook accounts is the simplest way to maximize your profits, and there's never been a better time to sign up. The playoffs are just about to get started for the NHL, the AHL, basketball. The NBA playoffs are about to get started as well, so why not sign up now? But if you go to our page, which is signupexpert.com/AHL, you're going to be connected to all of the sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. You don't have to choose. You don't have to go and do the research yourself. You don't have to know which is the best sportsbook for you. They will do it for you. All of these sportsbooks have different valuable sign-up offers for new users. When you register through our link, you're automatically going to receive the best offer at each one. Using multiple sportsbook ensures that you can always access the best available odds, which is the key to successful sports betting. If you want to take advantage of these benefits and support our podcast, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook at signupexpert.com/AHL. Must be 21 or over, only valid in US states and Canadian provinces where sports betting is legalized. Please gamble responsibly. I need to pull up my fancy spreadsheet that I made for this episode already, because it is not quite eclipse themed, but it is moon themed, and I decided
the fact that there's a spreadsheet for this is both exciting and scary.
Deana, my friend, there is an 8-page spreadsheet.
Oh no! Oh no!
So
okay, bring it on.
What would be fun is to take a look at every game that was played on a full moon this season and try to figure out which AHL player is the most likely werewolf based on penalty minutes.
Oh my God.
So I went through and I tracked every single game. Now, disappointingly, there were no full moon games in November, January, or March. So I only had 3 months to work with, and there was only one in the December full moon because it was boxing. It was December 26th. It was Boxing Day, so they only had one game that day. So tragically, I only have like 2 months worth of data to work with here, but some truly hysterical results here. So there were, if I just scroll down, 220 players took at least one penalty on the full moon, and at least, if I keep scrolling, 66 of them took more than one.
Oh gosh.
So a lot of potential werewolves here. But I want to kind of break down. I was going to do the top 10, but then there was a tie. So we're doing a top 11 here. Coming in at number 1, Alex Peters of Bakersfield had 17 penalty minutes on the full moon. Also at Bakersfield, Raphael Lavoie had 15. Tucson's Travis Barron had 15. Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins' Jagger Joshua had 12. Michael Milne in Iowa also had 12, and so did Nolan Allen of the Rockford Ice Hogs. Yoel Teasdale in Iowa had 9 penalty minutes. Jacob Larson in Belleville had 8, and so did Justin Surdif in Charlotte, Christian Reichel in Manitoba, and Topi Niemela in Toronto. So there's your kind of top 11. And then I decided to go a little bit further and see if I could figure out, like, is this a normal amount of penalty minutes, or is it the full moon that's making them do these things? So I went and looked at how many penalty minutes each player has had this season. And, like, so some of them, like, Justin Suddy, for example, had 8 penalty minutes, but he's had 60 penalty minutes this season. That's only 13% of his penalties came on the full moon. The top 2 guys here, both come from the Iowa Wild, so I guess there's a heavy werewolf population. I don't know if there is real wolves in Iowa, but heavy werewolf population on the Iowa Wild. Michael Milne had 12 penalty minutes, and he's only had 30 all season. So 40% of his penalty minutes have come on the full moon. But the winner here, my werewolfiest player in the AHL, is Yoel Teasdale, who had 9 penalty minutes on the full moon, 21 penalty minutes on the year. So 43% of his penalty minutes came on the full moon. And that's he only played 1 full moon game this season and had 9 penalty minutes in it. So I'm going to go ahead and call Yoel Teasdale for the werewolfiest player in the AHL. And thus concludes the stupidest segment that we have ever had on Calder's Calling.
I'm blown away.
This is what I did with my work day today. Instead of my job, this is what I did.
Yoel Teasdale is a werewolf. Confirmed. Yes. Also, I just typed in werewolves in Iowa into Google, and the top result was werewolf sightings in Iowa on TikTok with 28.1 million views.
It's Teasdale and Milne. It's them. It's the...
Wow. If only they were games of today.
In terms of our teams, very few werewolf behaviors on.
I was going to say,
especially if I just have to flip my sheets over here, if I can.
Yeah, I was going to say, Cleveland is full of good
Cleveland
boys.
Feels like it should be full of werewolves, right? But of their, I believe they played just the 1 full moon game. Brendan Gaunt took a penalty. Hunter McCown took a penalty. Jake Christensen took a penalty. Owen Stillinger, who I think looks the most werewolfy of the monsters, also took a penalty. So only 8 penalty minutes total for them, which is less than Yoel Teasdale by himself. Hershey, they had a couple. Their most werewolf player is Jimmy Huntington, who had a fighting major on the full moon. Then Aaron Ness, Alex Limoges, Joe Snively, Nico Kubel all had 4 penalty minutes. And then Chase Prisky, Colin Swire, Hardy Hammond, Actel, Henry Rabinski, Logan Day all had 2 penalty minutes. So a little bit more werewolfy than Cleveland, but still not as werewolfy as the Iowa Wild. And then just to finish off, the Barracuda had 2 full moon games, I believe. And so Anthony Vincent had 2 penalty minutes. Oscar Lindblom had 2 penalty minutes. Radim Shimmick, who is now with Manitoba, I want to say, had 4. And then a stealth vote for werewolf is Scott Sabarin, who had 6 penalty minutes over 2 games for the Barracuda. So again, not as high as I was expecting, but still, I don't know. I had fun putting this together. Even if no one else enjoys this, I very much enjoyed my deep dive into full moon penalty minutes.
You do realize this has to be a yearly thing now, right?
Oh yeah, this is going to be.
Like, I'm going to make this happen.
Right? Who's the new werewolf on the block?
This is amazing. So for now, it's in the heartland. It's in Iowa. Be careful, y'all out there.
Yeah, so that's what the Wild logo is. It's not a bear. It's a werewolf.
I love this. They need a werewolf night now.
Is this not this is again the stupidest segment I'm so pleased with myself about it.
I'm happy you did it. I was wondering though, because you brought up Herman Octel's name earlier in our group chat.
Yes.
Like, oh, I just
yes,
now realized that this player existed. I'm just thinking, why are you looking up Hershey? But now it all makes sense.
Yes, I looked up, I pulled the stats from every single game that was played on the full moons in February, December, and October. 2 of those were Saturdays, so basically every team played, and then December there was just the one game, which I believe was the Marlies versus the Belleville Senators, which feels like a game where if there was werewolves in, it would definitely get a little bit out of hand.
Yes.
It was also fun to look at the penalty minute totals and be like, oh, this game got extremely out of hand. There was a game against, I want to say it might have been that Iowa Wild game, actually. I think Michael Milne got the 12 penalty minutes and Yoel Teasdale got the 9 penalty minutes in the same game. My spreadsheet is not efficiently organized enough. Okay, yes, no, it was the Iowa Wild versus the Rockford Ice Hogs, and Yoel Teasdale had 9 penalty minutes in that game, Michael Milne had 12, and then Nolan Allen also had 12 penalty minutes in that game, so thus ends my werewolf segment. Next week, vampires.
Okay.
I don't know how I would do that, but...
I guess you look at night games versus day games and which players are better at night than they are at the day. Yeah.
Who's suspiciously healthy scratched during matinees.
Yes, absolutely. We'll get through all of that lore here by the end of next season.
I think that's going to do it for this week's edition of Calder's Calling. If you'd like to check out our written coverage of the AHL, no werewolves there yet, but you can find us online at thecaldertimes.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all at The Calder Times. If you haven't already, feel free to hit subscribe on YouTube or over on your favorite podcatcher. Leave us a like, leave us a comment. Don't forget to tell your friends where they can find all the AHL hockey chatter their heart desires. Finally, we'd like to extend a final thank you to our sponsor, Document Doctors. Until next week, I've been Jay Foster. That's been Deana Weinheimer. That's been Corey Swartz. We have been Calder's Calling.